Hello and welcome. My name is Errity Green. This is Wise Woman Oracle and Tarot, and today I am bringing you a pick a card reading on your most important past life. Now, is it true there's just one most important past life? Probably not, but we are talking about the most important life as relevant to this current one. If you don't believe in past lives, you can apply this reading to lives of your ancestors or experiences in your past. I also want to let you know that this is actually a collaboration with ANANDA Healing Hypnosis. She is linked below. So if you click the link below and go over to her channel, you will find a past life regression that you can listen to. And then you can share in both of our comments. Do let us know what the experience was like having had the reading and the hypnosis, or vice versa, whichever one you started with. We'd love to hear your experience. Last, I do want to remind you that the School for Spiritual Mentors is open. We are currently enrolling for the Spiritual Mentor Certification Program. You can click the link below and you will find more details there. I think that's a long enough introduction for today. So I will place a picture up of your 3 card piles to choose from today. As always, you are choosing from left to right. All right, so card pile 1, your most important past life as relevant to this one. So I feel like in a past life, you were jovial and celebratory. You might have been in an upper class of some kind, wealthier, with parties, gatherings, celebrations, big holidays. You might have been a part of a family with generational wealth, perhaps royalty. In one way or another, were able to experience the riches and treasures of life, and not just the material pleasures, although that's a part of it, like drink and wine and good food and perhaps castles or structures like that, where things are big and beautiful, perhaps luxurious, but you had people around you, there were celebrations around you. It just felt very full. The energy of your past life feels very full and lively and enjoyable and fun and surrounded by others. And I feel like you lived a very full, lively, gregarious, exceptional life. I do feel like that. And I feel like you had a lot of people around you that engage in this kind of experience too. Now, what's interesting though, because the energy changes as we move into the rest of the reading, is I feel like at this time, perhaps when things were lively or high, because everything was so awesome and amazing. And again, we're talking like royal pleasures and perhaps material excess, and just feels like wine is flowing, food is there, people are gathering, it could be like a socialite kind of lifestyle, royal kind of lifestyle, that I'm not sure how deep you really went into yourself. I feel like you were perhaps more used to being around others and sort of disassociating from your inner experience, and not in a way where you were like in avoidance or repression, but I don't think you even knew. It's just when your everyday life is sort of playing the role of a socialite and going to lunch parties and dinner parties and breakfast events, and it goes around again the next day, there's just not a whole lot of time and space to do any deeper diving or to really sit with yourself. And so it's interesting because this reading can go one of 2 ways, and that's where we're at right now. And we're going to see, it might be very clear as we move forward, but I feel like that was lost in that life at some point, where things took a turn and you ended up alone and having to find your way on your own. And it very well may have brought you into a very deep, dark depression. Now, this could also be flipped. Even though I structured the reading in this way, sometimes it does happen this way, that was the past life. And then in this life, you're finding that you are alone or spend a lot of time alone, and you wonder why you long for something else, or why things don't quite feel right, or why do you feel so lonely or desolate and depressed? And it could be because a part of you remembers this lively, socialite, celebratory experience, material pleasures, excess, people, wine, all these things. You got to remember that and your cells and your memory and your spirit. And then you find yourself in a drastically different position in this life. Now, something else that's coming through too is you might have found that in your earlier years of this current life, they matched or reflected what it was like in your past life. So a lot of noise, a lot of hustle bustle, a lot of people around, perhaps a large family, a large gregarious family, a lot of noise, a lot of play and all that stuff. And then as you've grown older or whatever, that has changed, right? So in some way, you went from this lively, gregarious, celebratory, socialite, excess kind of life or lifestyle to something that's more introverted, to something that's more lonely or at least alone, to something that is more to yourself, with yourself. So there was something here, I do believe so far, because we haven't really gotten as deep for me to really ascertain where we're going with this, but so far it's feeling like perhaps there was something for you to learn, to uncover, to discover within yourself that wasn't otherwise going to happen when you were always surrounded by this hustling, bustling, sort of holiday-based lifestyle. Let's see what else is here. Yeah, I do feel like in a past life for many of you, if not most of you, could be some of you. Sometimes it's very clear and I try to pick each word to see which one lands. Some, many, most. They all feel relatively equal. But I feel like you ended up living a relatively ordinary lifestyle. So that could either be this life or later and on in the other. And I think the reason it's one or the other is because I think it's different for some of you. So for some of you, you experienced this life and this lifestyle. It was busy, it was full, and perhaps there was a loss of that social group or a loss of your social status or a loss of your wealth. Now, here's the thing though, the reason why I am sort of leaning more toward that was the old life and now this one is perhaps more impoverished or alone or with less people or less busyness is because I don't feel a huge guttural loss. I do feel like if in your past life you went from A to B, or we'll say A to Z because it's a drastic change, that we would have a loss card here. We'd have a tower card here. We'd have a some kind of card here that would indicate grave loss and disappointment, grief, anguish. I don't see that. I do see someone who is hurt or lonely or alone. I do sense someone here who feels sort of small and they kind of feel like they're without their whole self, without their full self, without their complete self. But I also sense this energy of someone just living closer to themselves, closer to nature, closer to land. And if some of you have found that this is where you've ended up as you're watching this reading, someone who maybe lives much of their lives, or at least some of their lives in solitude, or even prefers solitude, or has found yourself in a position with a small social circle or just less things to do and people to see and places to go and things to eat and all the things. If you find it's a little bit more planted and grounded and rooted to nature, to everyday moments, to simplicity, there was something here for you to gain from this experience in particular that you were unable to gain from the previous life or experience of big, excess, lively, fun, exuberance, okay? So yeah, there was something here for you to learn about yourself, your own inner life. There had to be spaciousness. There had to be a slowing down. There had to be solitude for you to get to know yourself, for you to explore the layers of your inner being, for you to get to know the layers of your psyche, your layers of conditioning, who you are, why you're that way. You might even be unraveling things from many, many lifetimes or ancestral lifetimes. And it could be because for so long, especially at least in this last life that was really important, or we're saying the most important life as compared to this one, there's a clear contrast here. And I think two things are showing up for you is one, you're having to now do a deeper exploration of yourself that wasn't quite available before because of the life and lifestyle you'd experienced. And you might find you long for days gone past and you don't even know what you're longing for. Okay, so I'm sensing for some of you, you might have lived a 1920s lifestyle or 1920s life. Again, if you don't subscribe necessarily to past lives, you might just feel that energy of, right? Because energy is energy, it doesn't need the form. So even though it might not have been an actual physical, tangible incarnation in the 1920s, perhaps it was a similar time frame like that. Like there were times in like the 1800s and Paris, France, for example, that were similar to the 1920s in the United States. And Of course, I don't know all the times and cultures and locations around the world, but it might be the energy of that, right? So some of you might have lived a 1920s life. I am feeling that for some of you. For others of you, it's going to be like that energy, but perhaps elsewhere in a different time. And again, very gregarious, fun, lively. And if you feel like you long for that, if you have this longing for this liveliness, this exuberance, this celebration, this flowing wine and food and fun and friends and friendship, that's it. That's why. That's why. And I feel like the overall message, and we haven't completed your reading yet, but what I'm getting so far is just appreciating both sides of the coin, is finding gratitude for both. I do feel like, again, for some of you who don't necessarily believe in past lives, or this can also apply to themes and seasons of your life today and the current life. I'm sure most of you are into this, otherwise you wouldn't be here and listening. But I do like to offer that because energy doesn't have a specific time and place. It doesn't have to. So it can apply in any which way you take it. But I really feel like there was something here to learning and appreciating and having gratitude for both experiences. And I feel like, as an example, let's just say we were to flip it, and this life you experienced a lot of time in solitude and reflection and introspection and deep soul work and all of this stuff. And let's just say in the next lifetime, it went back to being gregarious and excess and material wealth and all this stuff and fun and friendship and lively and entertainment. You would long for that. You would ache. Your heart would ache for what once was now. So it's not like anything's better or worse. It's just different. And I feel like your soul wanted to experience both sides of the coin, both sides of the different ways of life, ways of being. One being very extroverted and out there and in your face and alive and exuberant. And the other one more introspective, reflective, in solitude, simple. So let's see what else is here. We talked about what you gain. We talked about, I want to sit with your cards for just a moment. Yeah, so there's a discovery here for you to uncover more about yourself, what you stand for, who you are, what you want, what you're capable of, what your potential is. You might find as a soul that your life this time is more focused on self-empowerment or self-gratification, or what could be considered selfishness, but it's just a focus on self. Again, maybe a lot of inner self-study. It doesn't have to be selfish, like buying yourself a bunch of things, but it could be something like just giving a lot of focus or attention to yourself, to your own path, to your own work. And that's because for so long it was the other side, right? Where it was always out there and with everyone else and embodying sort of like that cultural or social identity or that group, as opposed to yourself. So I feel like you were meant to learn like how you stand on your own 2 feet, but I don't mean like how to support yourself by yourself. It feels like who you are outside of the crowd. You know, how are you different from the crowd? It's about cultivating aspects of self and a healthy sense of self and a sovereign sense of self, and someone who is an I amongst a we, as opposed to just a we. There was something here about learning what you are capable of, what you're here for, a self-focus, a self-study, as opposed to maybe, again, a cultural, collective, or more social identity that you had in the past. Let's see what else is here. Yeah. So again, card pile 1, when we're talking about your reading and we're summing it up here and we're talking about your most important past life, I feel like it's pointing directly to the one that contrasted, if that's a word, contrasted with this one, which was something that, and it could be flipped. For some of you, you're here and your life is very gregarious this time. It was solitudinal, the last one. But I think for most people, it's going to be the way that I've described it so far, wherein it's wanting to point out 2 things here. One is you're learning the contrast, of both, kind of 2 sides of the same coin. And you're finding you're experiencing what it's like to be there and what it's like to be here. You're finding gratitude for both. And if you feel like you've longed for, had a yearning for, or an ache for, a heartache for, like a place that you haven't found here, or a time or an era or season that feels more jovial and lively, then that's what it was. You're seeking out that. Now, it doesn't mean you can't integrate that into your current life. While all the cards focus on solitude and learning to be vulnerable, learning to be on your own, learning to stand on your own 2 feet, but more so self-study and doing the introspection, reflection work, living a very simple life and that kind of thing. You can integrate aspects of your past life. It doesn't mean you have to let that go. Okay, well, I'm grateful for it. Now it's over. Bye-bye. Okay, you can invite more friends into your life, gatherings, social events, big dinners, food, parties, this is a part of your soul, a part of your makeup, a part of your composition. Don't feel like it has to like no longer happen just because it was in a past life. You yearn for it for a reason. Your soul misses it. It's a part of, again, your whole composition. Bring more of that into your life. That's some of the energy that's available here. So yes, you might be on a different path in this life in terms of your mission, focus, purpose, and yet there is room here for integration, integrating that past life into the current one such that you bring some of those elements and some of those features into this one. Why? Because you will find greater satisfaction and fulfillment in your life now when you're honoring all parts of you. So card pile 1, if this lands or resonates, do share your comments below, like, subscribe, press the bell icon. Of course, do check out the link for ANANDA Healing Hypnosis. That way you can get to know a past life through her regression that she's offering you. And do share your experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Last but not least, the School for Spiritual Mentors is now enrolling for certification as a professional spiritual mentor. So check out that link below, and I will see you next time. Thank you, card pile 1. All right, card pile 2, your most important past life as compared to, excuse me, your most important past life as compared to your current one. So I feel like you had a past life that was relatively privileged and you had your needs met, but I don't think that you were happy. So while there were all the things that you could have ever wanted, your energy tells me you weren't happy with it. You weren't satisfied with it. It's so interesting because card pile 1, we just did their reading and it was different where they lived a privileged lifestyle or life in its own way, but they were full, they were satisfied. Like this was the life they wanted to live and the life they wanted to lead. They were pleased. And yours, it's interesting because I don't even feel the energy of the bigness or the money or the excess or the wine and food on flow and on tap, just like ready for you and all that stuff like I did with card pile 1. This feels more like someone who's unhappy despite their needs being met or what it is that's being given to them. And, you know, I don't feel the energy necessarily yet. You know, we're hardly into the reading yet, but it's not saying why you're unhappy, but I feel like at least in an external way, if there was something outside of you that was causing unhappiness or dissatisfaction or lack of fulfillment, I just feel like you longed for something different. You longed for a world elsewhere. You longed for something you probably couldn't even put a name on or a word on, meaning I feel like in your past life, you know, maybe you were a part of a wealthy family, let's just say, and I'm giving an example to try to nail down the energy here, but let's just say you were sort of put in all these proper etiquette schools and you were supported to be this perfect man or this perfect lady. And of course, your whole path is set out for you in terms of what's expected for you, what you're meant to do, who you're meant to marry, how that's going to look, how that's going to work. And I feel like for you, you dreamt of something like, and you may not have said this specifically, but it was like, but I want to write. I'm a writer, which would be very different, say, from the demands of the life that you had been born into and the expectations that were then placed on you as a result of what was given to you. It's almost like you're sort of handed everything that you want, but in return is your soul, right? Your sacrifice, you're selling your soul to the devil. And of course, it doesn't have to be that dramatic and it doesn't have to feel that bad, but it was like for you, there was a cost in having to choose. It reminds me of Princess Diana, not that you were Princess Diana, but if you're familiar with her story, it's kind of that energy, or even Meghan Markle. You don't have to be fans of these women. I'm just giving you examples of this kind of energy where you are born into a situation that can give you everything you could ever dream of, but it wasn't your dream. And if you were to have stayed, because it looks like some of you left that behind, by the way, some of you might not have, because this is a group. And so I feel like there's a couple different ways this could have gone. I feel like some of you dreamt of leaving, wanted to leave, and never let yourself leave. And you felt trapped and handcuffed and forced into a life that was never truly yours. But there was definitely that cost, right? That sacrifice, circling back around to that if you were to take the gift that's been given, this privilege or these guarantees or this security, it asked you to hand over your soul. And I think for many of you, you chose not to, and you chose to leave. And maybe you were willing to stand on your own and pursue your art or your writing. That's an example, right? I was giving you of having your own dream, your own wants, just the life that was handed to you, as blessed as it wasn't yours. You didn't want it. Again, some of you, I feel like, might have lived out this life anyway and felt sort of trapped or suffocated and unable to pursue your true heart's desires, what it is you really wanted for yourself. And then for some of you, I feel like you walked away. You couldn't do it. It was too much for you to sort of swallow your pride, or that the hard pill of, I'm going to have to live someone else's life, or more or less play a role, and not be myself and hand over the keys to my life in order to be given the security. It's interesting because while most people would believe that a privileged life, wealthy life, elite life, royal kind of life in a past life would be something you would enjoy, appreciate, experience, especially nowadays when there's such a wealth gap and disparity. Well, and there always was, but you recognize that it came with a cost, and that wasn't a price you were willing to pay. There was no price on your authenticity or your integrity or your dreams, your aspirations, the real ones, meaning not the ones that they told you had to do or follow or pursue or put up in school to pursue, right? So I feel like a couple different things. So like we said, some of you, I think, perhaps lived out a life that wasn't true for you. That feels like a small minority or a small majority, even maybe 20% or a little bit more, where you sort of played by the rules, did the thing, did what you had to do, but ultimately suppressed all of your desires, sort of swallowed them whole, and then just played the role, but probably lived a very sort of numb, cold, distant life because you weren't living true to yourself. But some of you, I believe, you did leave it behind. You chose to leave it behind, which I think for the people who did leave it behind, which actually goes both ways, whether you left it behind or not, and you ended up facing a more challenge and hardship and struggle than perhaps you would have expected. Meaning, even if you swallowed your pride and you decided to repress your dreams and say, forget about it, and move on and play the role just to have the security and to play along and be a part of your group, whatever that was, your family, your royalty, whatever, you found it to be more challenging and hard than what you had expected. You know, the trade-off maybe wasn't as worth it as you thought it would be, but even leaving it behind, you found it to be stressful and difficult. Like, I get the energy of someone who isn't happy, who is snappy, who is angry, who is bitter, who is jaded, who doesn't have a whole lot to offer and just isn't happy. I mean, let's be honest. Someone who's not happy because they're living a life that's not true for them. Now, that's, of course, for the person who stuck around. For the person, you know, in your past life when you did, or if you did leave it behind, I feel like it was harder for you. And at times you might have questioned your choice or your decision to leave it behind. And you sometimes wondered, was it all worth it? You know, should I, could I, would I? You know, what is it? Shoulda, coulda, woulda, like wishing that maybe you did stick around. And, you know, it was really nice when everything was taken care of for me and I didn't have to work for it myself. And I think you might have encountered sort of challenges sort of beyond the security, the protection that was afforded to you as someone, say, in a wealthy family or something like that, where that's no longer available to you on the outside. And life is a little bit harder, and again, a harder pill to swallow than what you would have expected. So as a result of that life, I feel like there's this great impulse within you to live a life that's true for you, to live a life to actually accomplish your dreams, to live a life where you can achieve your vision, to live a life where you can live true to you. Even if it's not a big dream, big destiny, big fate, big vision, it doesn't have to be that. For some of you, it will be, where you get the permission and can give yourself the permission to advance on that, to pursue that. For some of you, it's just to be you, just to be able to spend the days and write and not be like an etiquette class or whatever, but just to be true to you, whatever that looks like. You were learning sort of self-empowerment, self-sovereignty, standing up for what you believe in, living a life that's true for you. I do feel like there is a need or a call to integrate these sides to you, because I feel like there has been a challenge or a gap or distance between this old version of you and this new version of you, meaning you might still have limiting beliefs around money and around wealthy people and around rich people. And you don't know that it's actually from your previous life. Like, it's not just from the cultural conditioning of today or from this life. It's actually from, at least some of it is from your resistance and your upset and your annoyance and frustration with the system when you were in it, where you were like, that's not me. And there was such a push away from that in order to own your own self and individuate yourself, that you defied it in a way, rebelled against it, resisted against it, to where now in your present life, I feel like in some ways it prevents you from really, again, integrating that, owning that, and allowing any kind of, say, we could say wealth, privilege, support, whatever, to come into your life, because you feel like, well, it feels like someone who's trying to feed someone, like I have the visual of someone trying to feed someone a spoon, and they're like, and so it's almost like that defiance and that rebellion of no, and I don't wanna, and I don't want it, and that's not me, and all that stuff. And, even though it would happen in your past life, you still experience it today inside of yourself, where you push away any maybe opportunities, blessings, material wealth, whatever, that could potentially resemble what once was in your past life. But the challenge, of course, in that is that you're not, I would imagine you're not as wealthy as you were in this past life. Otherwise, we wouldn't be looking at it, right? There's a contrast of some kind here, and it's saying you push wealth away actively. And so for me, the integration that wants to happen is, at least partly, because a lot of this is about learning yourself, standing on your own 2 feet, pursuing your own values, living a life that's true to you, not living true to the herd, not sort of swallowing your pride, but instead honoring your pride, living true to who you are, what you want, what your true vision is, what your true art or expression is, whatever. But a part of it wants to integrate, like, you can have both. You can have both, some wealth, some privilege, some support, some security, some stability, some financial security, stability, whatever, what have you, those elements of that previous life, and your own sovereignty, and your own truth, and your own authentic life. Do you see what I'm saying? Whereas I feel like you might push some of that away because you feel like you have to give up something in order to receive it. So let's see what else is happening here. Yeah, I feel like there's this, in this life, I do feel like this is coming to a close. I feel like you might be merging these parts of you, and you may be meant for wealth in this life. Of course, that's not going to be the case for all of you. For those of you who've always had a funny feeling inside, that might be the case, that it might very well be, if it's always felt close but also far away, or that you were meant to achieve a big dream or aspiration or something like that, or you were meant to be sort of different from your family of origin in this life. That very well could be the case, because a merging and integration wants to happen of that life and this life, where in this life so far, what the energy says, if you chose Car Pile 2, and if it doesn't land, choose one of the others. Although I always say, trust yourself, there's something here for you. That wants to merge. It's, instead of defying and resisting wealth, privilege, anything that could possibly support you, financial security, stability, or whatever, because you think you have to give up your soul in order to have it, and it's from that lifetime of having to push it all away. Now is the opportunity to own both. Here's your opportunity. Yes, you've lived 2 sides of the coin, and now you get to have both. It doesn't have to be either or, right? So remember, we talked about in your past life, some of you just stuck around, sucked it up, swallowed your pride, and lived a very unhappy life. Well, now you're being offered the chance, you get to live both. You can have both wealth, financial prosperity, that level of support or privilege or whatever, and live a life that's true for you. Or the flip side, the people who ended up leaving and walking away from that lifestyle and ended up living a little bit more of a harder life as a result, and wondering if it was worth it. Although they did find their own strength, by the way, their own resilience, their own endurance, and they found their own path and carved their own way, they did wonder, well, gosh, there was still something missing because I didn't have that. So it's like both. You can have both. In fact, you can have it all. So I feel like this journey is coming to a completion. It's coming to an end in this lifetime, in terms of these 2 lifetimes were very much connected. Whether they were consecutive or not doesn't matter, but they were very much of the same energy, the same chapter of your life. And I feel like you were meant to, this is all going to come to a close in this life, meaning you're going to complete that chapter. The circle of life comes around, meaning you end up being able to merge both of these. You don't just have to live for you and be impoverished, but you don't have to be impoverished and not have any security, stability, support, financial success, etc. Right? Financial prosperity. Let's see what else here. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you guys, so sweet. I'll show you because I had such a funny reaction to your cards. So what's the outcome? You do get to be your authentic self, and you do get to live the big vision. You get to have both. No sacrifice required. No sacrifice required, card pile 2. You don't have to give up like the wealth, the fame, the privilege, the support, the security, the stability, the finances. You don't have to get rid of all of that in order to be authentic. Okay? And in order to be authentic, you don't have to give up this. You can have both. This lifetime is all about, I feel like, integrating these lifetimes, these energies, these personalities, the resistances and whatnot that you develop through this history of sort of being force-fed wealth that you weren't truly connected to. And now you get to live authentically, live true to you. You don't have to wear any masks anymore like you did in that one life just to get by. And some of you walked away, but then found life to be relatively hard. It's hard being poor. We all know that. It's hard being wealthy, but it is harder being poor. Who am I to say? Right? I'm a little biased, I guess. But yeah, look at this life you end up getting to lead. You get to be fully integrated. You get to come to some sort of completion or closure, and that you get to have both, right? So let's see if there's anything else that wants to come through here. This is all about following through on your desires, your personal desires. And I feel like some of you may continue to repress your desires in this lifetime because of a habit in that past life where, again, you were being force-fed stuff that you didn't want, and then you had to repress that whole side of yourself, the whole dreams, desires, destiny of your own self in order to live in this life that really didn't feel true for you, but it fed you, bathed you, clothed you, served you, supported you, probably gave you a spouse and a kids and a house and all that stuff, right? Wealthy elite or high upper class or royalty. So it met your needs, but it didn't really meet your needs. You know what I mean? And so I feel like you got into a habit too of suppressing your desires, because even when you walked away, you later discovered that, well, gosh, I did kind of like having those things and I didn't really know what it would be like without them. So I feel like so then you almost had to suppress that, where it was like, oh, I'll just forget about that life. It's too painful. It's too painful to face what I did have, what I gave up, and now what I'm experiencing today. And even though I get to live true to myself, I'm living a more challenging, stressful, hardship kind of life. Where one way or the other, no matter which way you went, you were having to suppress your desires. And this is all about allowing and expressing your desires and becoming whole, allowing yourself to access, to pinpoint. And if there is any pain that you have to face, facing that, if there's any resistance you have to face, facing that, and ultimately integrating both sides of yourself, both of these personalities or lives, so you can come into this healing, right? That leads to bada bing and bada boom. All right, card pile 2. I look forward to hearing from you. I'd love to hear your responses, your stories in the comments. Of course, check out ANANDA Healing Hypnosis's link as well in the comments, and then you can share your experience. And as I shared earlier, the School for Spiritual Mentors is currently enrolling for the Professional Spiritual Mentor Certification Program, so you can check out that link below. And with that said, I will bid you farewell, and thank you so much, card pile 2. I'll see you next time. Card pile 3, we're talking about your most important past life. So I feel like in a past life, you couldn't live true to yourself in some way. And looking at the cards, like just letting the whiff up, the air or the scent of the cards. There were a few different examples here, and so I'm going to let it apply to you based on your circumstances, where you feel it might best land, because especially it's a group reading, but also it's not giving me a clear, like just a specific thing. But it feels like in one way or another, and this tends to be the way, doesn't it? For your past life, your most important one, you couldn't live true to you. I feel like in some ways you had to hide, maybe even hide in the closet, suppress a part of yourself. So I'm getting, these are the energies that I'm getting are like the creatives and visionaries and people who had big ideas and big words but ultimately couldn't speak for themselves or give voice to that. Or maybe they saw injustice or deceit when it was happening, but was unable to speak for it, or just was not allowed. It wasn't permitted. So these could be for groups who were held down and silenced, censored, and suppressed in the past: women, people who were of different gender identities, people who were, any facet of the LGBTQ spectrum. I feel like definitely for some people, they were not, heterosexual or a part of the heteronormative culture. I feel like they had to play along, but in one way or another were in the closet and couldn't be honest about who they were in terms of their true self. So people who also were witches. So I'm feeling the energy of people who would have to sort of hide away in crowded, dark areas, like in the woods or caves or wherever, and keep their secrets silent or quiet, because if anyone found out, they would get in trouble. It just feels like the energy of being a big personality, having a lot to say, having a lot to share, having wisdom or creativity or creative expression that isn't allowed, that has to be hidden, that has to be quieted. And ultimately, you're not able to be yourself or live in full alignment with who you were. And, as a result, I feel like no one really knew the real you, or very few people did. And so it could have led to experiences of deep loneliness and solitude, but even, that feeling that no one understands you or really knows you, so you feel really alone. But also hiding in terms of having to be very quiet and hush-hush about your life, about your lifestyle, about your choices. It has a lot of the energy of even of justice, of like people hidden away, like the Underground Railroad kind of style, where people are having to do things behind closed doors and meet with people and make things happen that they otherwise would not be able to, that they can't do out in daylight. So a lot of nighttime energy where, again, things are happening with candlelight and under the light of the moon, as opposed to in daylight or in, out there and for everyone to see you or out in public. But this is also meeting up with your lover in the dark of night, or away in the woods, or in a home, or in a place where someone knows about it and they will allow you to meet or see your lover where otherwise you're not allowed to. This feels like, this kind of energy of a woman who's not allowed to write, but she knows how to write and she wants to say something. And so again, by candlelight, when everyone else is asleep, is, even though she's not supposed to know how to read or write, she knows how, and she's using her gift, but she can never come out and share that it's her, that she has to use a pseudonym, and or she just writes for the love of it, but no one could ever know, right? So a lot of the energy of having creativity, having a unique self-expression, having a unique creative expression, having a unique art, craft, something like that, a uniqueness to you, about you, that you weren't able to fully be on about, or be loud about, or be yourself about. And so there ended up being a lot of shame, secrecy, darkness, and silence around it. Now, I feel like there was an enjoyment or a thrill to this, to a small degree, or at least some degree for some of you, where it was like, probably at least in the beginning, where it was like, oh, I get to sneak away, and, hid in the darks of night, lit up by candlelight alone. They stood around the witch's brew, or they met with their lover. It's like, well, frick, that sounds amazing, But I feel like there was a lot of joy in you for this part of your life, by the way. There was a lot of joy. It brought you a lot of joy. It brought you a lot of animation. Like, it brought life and vitality to your life. It brought joy. It brought color to your life, where otherwise there probably, I don't want to say was none, but it just felt like if you can't be your full whole self, then how would you? Of course, you wouldn't feel fully alive. It's like a part of your life was in black and white, and a part of your life was in color. Part of you lived one life maybe during daylight and another life at night. And so again, there might have been a thrill to this for a time, but ultimately, I feel like there was an experience of just not being seen, not being heard, kind of living life alone. And you can see how, kind of having to hide behind closed doors, not fully be yourself, some deceit, where you didn't know who to trust. You didn't know who, you didn't feel like you knew for sure who was really on your side, or who would tell your secret. More than likely, I don't have a big sort of violation kind of energy here, or trauma energy here. So, You know, I do feel the energy that there could have been people around you that you didn't trust or couldn't trust, or they didn't trust you, or they knew you were hiding something. And so with that air, with that energy, very well could have led to people telling on you, and you probably getting your wrist slapped, if not significantly more. We're not getting, again, major traumas here. With that said, it doesn't mean that those things didn't happen. Just a lot of secrecy, shame, silence, darkness. But ironically, the thing that was held in darkness was the thing that brought most color to your world, to your life, to your inner experience. Like, you were happily a writer, right? You were happily someone who could read. You were happily someone who was engaged with a lover who might not have been the norm for that time, for that era. You were happily yourself in this creative expression and this self-expression. Ironically, the thing that you had to hide gave you the most life and the most joy and the most freedom and the most fun. There is something here, I think, around that too, in terms of just in shadow work in general as well. No doubt there's some parallels with the things that we hide tend to actually carry a lot of light if we allow them to be integrated into our life, into our world. So this also then, for some of you, could very well be something that's still repressed and hidden inside of you somewhere, because for so long you had to sort of box it up, wrap it up, and keep it away and tuck it away in the darkness of night. And very well in this lifetime could still be repressed, still not be in full expressions, and or you feel a lot of shame about who you are, and secrecy, and feeling like you have to silence yourself or hide, or you can't be seen, or you have a fear of being seen. It could have to do with this past life. If you aren't able to pinpoint it to something in this current life, which you probably can, because usually some parallels and themes kind of bleed through. But if for some reason you can't, very much so this past life, with that energy of always having to hide, I can't be seen, no one can really know me, no one can know what I'm doing. If you kind of have that energy in your world, in your life, in your psyche, fear of being found out, fear of being discovered, fear of punishment, fear of retribution, whatever that is, it very well could be from this past life, in terms of not being able to be fully yourself and own that part of you. And again, for some of you, some of these aspects of you might still be repressed, but I think more true for most of you, it's going to be that you feel this kind of air of secrecy, shame, and silence. You're like, why do I feel this? Like, this has never been relevant for me. It could be from your past life. So if you're scared to go out there and be honest about, or share, or live in, or embody your expression, your self-expression, your creativity, your art, your voice, this might be why. Okay? So let's see what else is happening here. Yeah, so, for some of you, I do want to say too, so we talked about having to, like, in the dark of night, sort of engage with or do whatever. And I feel like for some of you too, you might have been married to someone. And let's just be honest, you guys, in card pile 3, most of you are going to be women, minorities of some kind in the LGBTQ spectrum. It's going to be people who have been just underprivileged and discriminated against and suppressed and silenced over the years. Honestly, because the energy here, it doesn't feel like, for example, a white man is really going to relate. I mean, I hate saying it like that, but I'm just saying it like that. I'm just being honest with you. And if you hear you are a white man, then, you wouldn't be in the past life, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Or whatever kind of was the overall privileged group of your society or culture at that time, because it feels like some of you are sort of, you don't get along with your husband and sort of you run away. And so you might run away to, and I don't mean like run away forever, but you sort of, in the dead of night, you sneak out and you go visit your friends, or you go visit your lover. But things are being done under moonlight, by candlelight, hidden away in dark corners, because you can't be who you are. So this lifetime is all about coming home. This lifetime is all about letting yourself be you, letting yourself be loud and proud you, letting yourself come home, letting yourself be you, and giving yourself that freedom, that liberation to come home to yourself. It's about letting your inner child go out and play again. It doesn't have to hide away and be scared of the threat of violence or what might happen to it. Your inner child can be free to roam, free to run, free to play, free to be itself, free to paint and make a mess. And of course, that's metaphorical for whatever it is, the part of you that really yearns for what it wanted in that past life, what it wanted to be free and unlock from itself. It now doesn't have to be so hesitant and reluctant and apprehensive and held back about being its full, complete, whole, loud, out there, expressive self. And it doesn't mean you have to be a loud and proud person. It just means you get to express this. You get to open this box. It no longer has to be hidden, locked away, tucked away, and you don't have to live your life in shame, secrecy, or silence anymore. Okay? You get to come home and you get to live freely, and you can actually sort of sit back, relax, enjoy the ride, and enjoy the show. No longer hiding, no longer suppressing, no longer tucking away, hiding away. You get to live openly. Like, look at these cards. Like, you can't make it up. You get to live openly. And all the rainbow, hello. And I feel like where you once had to tuck things away or things were shrouded in darkness, you get to come to light and you get to come to life and you get to live in color. So where you once lived in dull gray or black and white and everything was hidden, now you get to live in full color as your full, whole, totally expressed, self-expressed full self. So card pile 3, your most important past life was one where you felt like you couldn't be yourself because of the threat of violence, punishment, or even death, where you felt like you couldn't trust people and there were very few people you could trust, where you had to live your life as your full expression in hidden places and in the dark and with small groups of circles of people who knew you and loved you. And for much of your life were unable to live fully expressed and probably died unable to be your whole, full, true self. So this life is all about coming home to yourself, being yourself, living in your light, living in full color. And what an exciting and fun life that is. So happy for you, card pile 3. This lands, resonates. Do share your story in the comments below. Of course, check out Ananda Healing Hypnosis's link below, and you might even share with both of us how it went in terms of exploring both. And I also want to remind you that the School for Spiritual Mentors is enrolling now for the Professional Spiritual Mentor certification. So you can check that link out below as well. And I will no longer hold or keep you here. It's been so wonderful, and I will see you next time. Thank you, card pile 3.